Welcome back. It's loaded and rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson, trucking expert here at FreightWaves. On the menu for today is going to be talking about freight fraud. It's there. It happens. You need to know more about it because it's going to continue to happen now that there is more money in the freight cycle. Don't let folks fool you. There's still more carriers out there, therefore more instances of fraud. Joining us today to talk about it are the folks at ITS Logistics. Going to be welcoming on Jered Snow. He's going to be the Senior Director of Network Operations at ITS. Jered, pleasure to have you on. Pleasure to talk to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. Name's Jered Snow. I've been at ITS Logistics going on 11 years now. Definitely have had a journey at ITS and have seen a lot of parts of the business, starting as a broker, growing into managing our customer team, and ultimately into my role of network optimization and network operations at ITS Logistics. So the freight fraud topic is definitely something I deal with daily and is in my job title and something that you constantly have to be monitoring. So I really appreciate you having me on today.
As a fellow former network design person myself, I can completely relate. We were lucky at my asset-based carrier, though, that all of our trucks were company drivers, but I can't imagine the challenges is when you want to optimize the network, especially in the logistics space. Now you have to have the added complexity of making sure who you put on the lane is who they are.
Absolutely. And that starts with the true digital identity in today's world. It's so crazy how much this industry is moving around and really knowing who you're working with. We very so much value our carrier relationships and our contractor process where, we have a best-in-class vetting process and a best-in-class carrier relations team. So we definitely take a high priority on making sure we know who's hauling our freight and offer the best solutions to our customers and folks in the community, and overall just supports the business that ITS Logistics is doing. So
looking at that situation, the vetting process is always important. What are some of the things that go into it? Back in the day, the challenge, it used to be you could just call, give your MC or your SCAC, here's my insurance, I'm totally real, give me the freight. And now it's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I remember, when I first started in the business, I used to get these big stacks of carrier packets, they were called, and I'd enter the insurance myself. Thankfully, technology has come along, and, there's various platforms out there that do the vetting for companies, but it's very important that you have a great team that puts in the rules and requirements because, a vetting platform that doesn't have the logic that protects your business and is right for your business essentially could put you in harm's way. So we currently are partnered with Highway, and we use them for our onboarding and vetting process, and they handle some of the automated insurance and all the other technology capabilities that we use for onboarding our partner carriers.
And that's kind of like the first step. It reminds me of the carrier packet through like an RMIS style platform. So we get in, let's say we are through Highway and I've got my carrier, I'm doing my thing. My MC, when we're looking at now, once you're in the system, are there any specific red flags that things may be a little funky, as they say, a little weird going on? Is there anything once you're in that walled ecosystem and you've passed the first check? What are things folks may need to be aware of?
There's definitely, I could point out probably 1,000 different instances, right? Associations, addresses, affiliations with other carriers. The main focus is to understand who you're talking to on the phone. And, that can be done with, reviewing Carrier 411, looking at a platform like Blue Wire, or really just looking into the rule set that Highway has in place. And what's unique about Highway is, the two-factor authentication. So they're actually taking what comes from the FMCSA and matches the folks that actually sign up on that profile. So we're identifying who the carrier is, and first and foremost, understanding who's going to be hauling our freight. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the whole process. But the first thing would be definitely to understand who you're talking to.
And I'm kind of curious as well because I remember back in my brokerage days, this was the challenge: is if you hadn't worked with a carrier a while, it has to go back through compliance to make sure that it's checked, updated insurance, etc. Has the tech gotten to the point now where you get alerts in advance saying, "Hey, this guy's got an address change. There's some schedule discrepancies." Is that when we're looking at these highway style ones that folks are utilizing? Are we getting proactive?
Absolutely. So we're definitely looking into that. We take it one step further at ITS Logistics. Anyone can go in and sign up on a carrier profile. Hey, here's our website. Go ahead and sign up. We have ours hidden, like many other large carriers out there. So we definitely know who we're talking to on the phone. We have that interface. Make sure we do a little bit of vetting. Um, but as far as a new carrier, we have a compliance process where every new carrier is approved. We're looking at making sure we have a picture of the truck, looking at who's going to haul the freight, a CDL from the driver that matches up, and then they go through our tracking platform. So that's approved at a management level prior to a new carrier. And then furthermore, we even have what we call a non-active or stale carrier. So if you haven't hauled a load with ITS Logistics in the past 30 days, whether it's just the stars didn't line up, we didn't have business for that contractor during that period, we go ahead and we reapprove that carrier to go through our process as well. So it's continually, we're doing a data dump every single night, making sure no FMCSA changes have been detected, address changes, insurance not on file, whatever it might be. So we're definitely looking at this round the clock. And that starts with training our folks. And that's something that is very important. At ITS, our people are everything. So while we see a lot of folks going into the digital automation side of it, we definitely automate the stuff that we don't want to have somebody make a judgment call out on the floor like, are they an active carrier? Is the insurance validated? So we will use highway and vetting platforms for that. But we believe in our people, and our people go ahead and look through the process, and we have management on site that's looking at each carrier that's coming through the network.
And it's kind of a really cool dovetail, a segue, so to speak, into I like the system 30 days, inactive, redo it. I was talking with the folks at Fastmore, a subset of Echo, and they said one of the challenges that they noticed was it's easier at times on the front end to find the small carriers if they're doing fraudulent activity. But it challenges the medium to large carriers because there's so many dispatchers, there's so many different emails. Is that something as well when like you want to have that sweet spot of like 25 to 150 trucks? Does that open the door where fraudsters are like, oh, I'm going to go upstream a little bit if I'm going to start spoofing?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that in the industry, right? I think that the profile for a fraudster can happen from one truck to 1,000 trucks. It just depends on how sophisticated they are. A lot of the carriers in that 50 to 150 maybe have their own email addresses or profiles or more information on the dispatchers. And we take it as far as approving each dispatcher we work with through the highway network. So we understand who we're actually booking the freight with instead of, hey, Tom called in today and they're going to book for one of our largest contractors that we have. And we've never heard of Tom, so that would raise a red flag for us for sure.
I had a story from Alive Logistics. It was the dispatch services. That's another fun thing. So you have multiple motor carriers using a dispatch service. They give you one MC, it pops hot. They say, "Let me pull out my other MC," and this one's cleared in the system. Is there any of that? I think a lot of folks sleep on the fact there's these multinational dispatching services that can cloud them waters.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is through technology, that's in a rule set that we have where we're able to identify folks that are using those dispatch services, and we're able to fish those out pretty efficiently. We want to work with the carrier directly. Many times carriers are out on the road, the small mom and pop shops. And that's why when I talked about the relationship aspect, we want to make it as easy as on them as possible. So through our technologies and processes, we prefer to work with them directly, and we do a very good job at that.
And I think adding on the text and processes. So on the front end, before you even get the load, we've gone through the systems. We look at like the highway style, RMS style verification. When I give you the load, are there any additional things folks need to be concerned about? Because from my personal dispatching experience, you can be very dangerous with a PO and a pickup number.
Yeah, absolutely. And that definitely starts with our proprietary tracking system or use of aggregations or tracking the trucks in real time via ELD. making sure that truck is actually at the pickup number versus just giving it out. We'll also wait till we have the truck on a tracking platform so we have visibility prior to just shooting out the load number. So a smart rate con or a smart load number, so to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of so some brokers and carriers and 3PLs, the combos have done two different things I've noticed with the rate cons. Some of them they'll wait till the last minute and send it all at once you've accepted it. But I've seen some like a TQL where they just give you two different ones and you still have to call in and harass them. Has it gotten any easier if I for me to get the info? Because the big challenge would be, well, now I have all these extra steps. How can I still timely get it and then dispatch my own driver?
Yeah, so like I said, we have a proprietary tracking software where we're able to use the communication in the platform to relay the pickup number to the driver when they're within a geofence.
I'm loving the geofence stuff, by the way. It's that I think that's the next level. I know large fleets have used it before, but like finally seeing it matriculate down to where everyone can finally use geofences and try to share the data. When we're looking at the types of fraud in terms of commodity, in terms of the breadth, a lot of folks are multimodal. Is there anything in your experiences in being in the industry that is more prone to having this kind of fraud? I need to keep an extra concern.
Absolutely. Just to clarify that, we're talking the actual commodity that would be targeted that we're protecting furthermore than just kind of moving racks or whatever it may be.
Yeah, like beverages, posting out Red
Yeah.
Bulls and random
No, absolutely. So, I went ahead and broke down, the top targeted commodities. So at one, you got food and beverage, right? Easy to sell, hard to trace. So that's the number one targeted commodity. Second would be household goods, also easy to sell, right? Shampoo bottles, beauty supplies, things that can go at flea markets or just be resold at various marts and is easy to transact on. Third coming in behind food and beverage and household is electronics. Fourth would be motor oil and then tires. And last would be apparel and accessories. So in that top five, obviously anything that's HFA, high value associated would be targeted by the fraudsters.
I remember some loads back in my team expedited days. They would actually have their Samsung cell phones, so they actually ran unannounced, send a follow-on vehicle to make sure that you're not being tailed by another follow-on vehicle. So is more things in your experience starting to move in that high value realm, or is that something where like it's the same amount, we're just making all that kind of HVP we used to see it in expedite, we're making that mandatory across the whole space because it's getting more?
Yes, obviously inflation probably caused that a little bit. If you look at the 2023 data compared to the 2024 data, the loss of a load in 2023 was 150,000, call it. And in 2024, so far year to date, we're hovering around $189,000 per load. So I think all freight's targeted, right? These fraudsters and folks that are putting together schemes are doing anything they can. And, it's like a criminal deal, right? You start off with a small petty crime and work your way up to something that's more serious. So definitely the comfort of the folk that's posing to steal the load, their sophistication changes as they get more comfortable, performing these criminal activities.
And I'm always curious: is it true that there's a Glendale, California mafia of double brokers and fraudsters? The myth.
Yeah, the double broker of Glendale, California. They definitely exist, right? An interesting stat is there's about 22 different countries that comprise of these criminals. Specifically in the Glendale area, that's a very popular area, right? Southern California being the most targeted area. Texas, Illinois, Georgia as close follows after them. So it makes sense that there's a lot of talk about a Glendale gang in that area. I heard something earlier this week on an article about a cartel that's moving in and trafficking people and getting up to 100 loads a month type deal. So it's constantly evolving. But there's definitely a different couple groups in that Glendale area that comprise of that double brokering. And something that can be done is it's an easy rule set is just anyone that has a Glendale, California address. It doesn't mean we're going to work with them, but we're definitely going to take a second look at that carrier to make sure they are who they say they are for sure. So that's on our radar.
And looking at expansion in the supply chain, we're seeing changes where cross-border movements in and out of Mexico as well. I've talked to people; they tell me CTPAT or CTPAT, not like a CPAP machine, but CTPAT is there some helps your loads breathe, you know? But is there something that, as we're seeing this more activity, does that open up more avenues of fraud as well? Because I've sent drivers down to Laredo, and on a perfect day, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that definitely, activity south of the border is definitely for a select few that really know how to operate in that region. Like I said, Texas is in that top 5 for fraud. So Laredo, San Antonio, McAllen, FAR, even El Paso, right? You look at those areas and you definitely have to have different SOPs and strategy in place to be preventative. So yes, if you're not careful and you just look at it as fraud across the board, I would say that you need to do some more research and put some more processes and training in for your people.
That's what I'm thinking. Training seems like half the battle. Do you feel like, given the market right now, it's still a down market, it's lean, margins are tight for carriers and brokers? Is that one of those things when you're making a training plan, do you have to remind them and say, look, I know you want to sell this. I know you say you need this rip, but we really got to make sure that this first rip is not the last rip with the customer because it gets stolen?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is something that's really relevant. And, you brought it up, training. It's critical in our business. Like I said, our people are ITS logistics. So we definitely put a heavy emphasis on training and making sure we're not looking for the short-term gain, but we're looking strategic.
And I wanted to circle back on one of the fascinating things I've encountered, which is buying MCs used off the open market. So I think the process you have in place, the 30 days, is really awesome because I have a fear that if I got out of it because we see people exiting, I'm selling my 3-year-old MC, someone else is buying it. But is that one of those concerns as well, as you've got to, if they fall through the cracks or fly under the radar?
Absolutely. So we definitely have seen that. I'm guessing you watched a video about a month ago that had some information on that most of the industry probably watched as well. We've seen it where they're buying a mom and pop shop or a logging company or a tractor company or a cattle moving company. And they say, hey, don't report any changes to the FMCSA. I'll take your cell phone plans. I'll take your email address, and I want to have that so it doesn't flag any of the vetting technologies, right? And that's definitely something that's looked at. And when we're going through that process of revalidating or recertifying that carrier, we're making sure there's no entanglement where people can do any fraudulent activity. You see it a lot on like Craigslist or Facebook, and some of these algorithms of folks that are outwardly selling their company are being detected that way. And there's a rule set put in place that we utilize to help catch that, where if you don't have that type of sophistication or ongoing training or revisiting your SOPs, you're definitely going to get burned for sure.
So it's almost like an arms race. I would have never thought that, if I'm like a highway RMS, RMIS, other security provider for verification, that's kind of where now I have to check these secondary markets because everyone's getting more clever trying to work around the first thing I have in place.
Absolutely. And you just said it perfectly, right? These vetting or technology companies, well, if brokers, carriers, shippers, everyone's sophisticating on the technology side, we definitely know these fraudsters are building out their own schemes and their own technology. So it's really a race to who can protect who against what, right? And you never know. So that's why it's not just a set it and forget it. You have to constantly revisit and keep it a breathing document internally.
Looking ahead, far-reaching. We're gonna go into the future a little bit. I see on the part of my job I have to be social. So on social media, I see folks can do dubs, videos, mimicking voices. With the AI technologies now, is there a growing concern, or is that even yet on the radar, where potentially a fraudster is gonna spoof Bob that he bought it from? It's like, Bob, record this real quick. Okay, Bob's now my phone person, and I'm using AI to book a load.
Definitely. Something you didn't mention would be, the replication where they're artificially intelligently printing photo IDs, right? So that's where you got to get creative and have different processes where, hey, go ahead and write today's date on a piece of paper, hold up your ID in front of your truck, and send it in live time, right? So it's not photoshopped or whatever it might be. So absolutely, AI it's a scary animal. Nobody in the world for any industry, whether it's freight or, kids going to school, there's so much in AI that it's so new that we don't even know.
I feel like people are concerned about AI for the wrong reasons. The real wrong reason is the AI becomes sentient. The scary reason is it has access to all this data and it is trained to look at this data in a certain way and it crunches the numbers in a certain way. Is that something where that's going to be the opportunity as well? I spoke with somebody, they said that service level changes on lanes over time, suspicious behavior and like tracking or geofencing or telematics. Do you think that's kind of the next step, or we're just going to have to find an AI that'll try to put these little nuances together and then start picking up the subtleties?
I think you just hit it on the head there. Definitely going to have to focus on certain areas of AI and combat it as they come, right? And hopefully security and vetting platforms are really staying proactive on looking into ways to combat AI challenges in the marketplace.
Well, I got about 4-ish minutes left. I have one humorous question. In countries like South Korea, they have now decided to create their own chatbots for the purpose of online dating in terms of matchmaking. Do you feel that one day we'll have dueling chatbots with a carrier and a broker who will preemptively haggle over the load and then they'll give you an offered rate?
I definitely think that's a possibility. We saw one of the titans that tried to digitalize the freight booking marketplace fail earlier this year. Um, I'm a firm believer of people first. And I think that's still got several years before that's even a topic that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah, completely. I was always curious about that. I'm envisioning some ideas, maybe my likeness. We already took my voice, by the way, and we turned it into a promo reader. So I don't get any royalties, but we're working on it. Switching gears a little bit before we finish up here, network design in the age of the brokers, RFPs and stuff coming in. I always wondered, this is something that when I was an account executive, is now the time where you have to really have those relationships, because if RFPs are coming at this point and there's a lot of feeling that maybe things will get better in the next 6 months, is there ever a balancing act as well when you're trying to lock in that network? It's one thing to make sure that they're legit, but do you see any headwinds on that as well?
Absolutely, right? That's why the relationship aspect of the business, whether you're on the customer side or the carrier side, is so important. And, RFPs, the true value of an RFP or a contracted lane starts with the availability of capacity and feeling that you're strong enough to go to market with that rate and can hold it for X amount of time. And that's done with relationships and really stitching the network together in, reducing empty miles and maximizing the efficiency for a carrier to run on your business, right? So if our business is growing and we're growing contractors' business, we believe that we're going to have a strong model in our pricing algorithms to set against headwinds in the market, whether it's, I think the biggest thing called out right now is hurricane season that might disrupt the rates. Looking on the radar from everybody's crystal balls from now till 25, everybody's hearing quarter two, quarter three of 2025, and that's still unknown. We definitely heard folks talking about this time last year, and we're still at a flat market with not much happening.
I'm curious about the hurricane as well. Have you had any experience with FEMA? Have they gotten better? Did they ever buy their own trailers? When I was at US Express, we give them like 1,000 and we lose them for like 6 months. Has it gotten any easier for drivers interested in partnering for FEMA freight?
We definitely have a partnership with them. There hasn't been too many major disturbances where it's just outside of kind of the normal freight that's tendered through that process. But, in those types of emergency situations, trailers get lost and shuffle. We're going on, adding to about 3,500 in our network for our trailers. We just took a really heavy emphasis of arming them with GPS units and a state of the market tracking
Nice.
capabilities to know where our assets are.
That was the biggest game changer. I used to have a sponsor, Skybits, and they were the first ones we did with telematics. That's going to be cool. I hope it. Best of luck for your hurricane season. I feel like it's Hunger Games right now. Hopefully, we don't have anything bad. Knock on wood. But the telematics is definitely a big deal as well. A lot of great information, Jered. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Folks want to learn more, get in contact, learn more about ITS logistics. Best way to find out.
Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it as well. ITSlogistics.com or find you on LinkedIn. What's the best way?
ITSlogistics.com is a good way to find us.
Okay, perfect. Really do appreciate it. We'll catch you again soon. Speaking of time, though, I'm out of time, so that's going to be a wrap for this show. But if you're just joining us, we will be on demand on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. So you get to catch the full experience after it's live. This is the live show still. I have a little bit of time, so check out the Loaded and Rolling newsletter as well, written by yours truly. It comes out Thursdays at 2 p.m. So if you ever need to remember, 2 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays, something good will come your way. That's a wrap for this episode, though, but an absolute pleasure. Join us next week. We may do it live. We may have a pre-recorded segment. You're going to have to tune in and find out.